I'm Paul Fromm, and I'm the director of the Canada First Immigration Reform Committee. $57. This is a story about $57. You know, if you're over 40, you may have had the same feeling I and many of my friends have had, and that is we're working harder and running faster to end up the same. Many people get the impression that I was better off 25 years ago when I was young. Didn't have as much income, but I seem to have more disposable income. I'm earning more dollars today, yes, than I was, but I don't seem to be any farther ahead. Well, if that's a feeling you've had or people you know have had, they're not wrong. Recent economic studies have proven that the average person today is $57 better than they were 25 years ago. That's over a whole year. Your annual income, allowing for inflation, is $57 better than it was. Well, that doesn't sound to me like a very big achievement for a country as rich and as full of potential as Canada. What's gone wrong? Well, one of the things that's gone wrong is mass immigration, most of it from the third world. Through all of the last 25 years, Canada's unemployment rate has never fallen below 6%. And yet, in those years, especially in the last 10, the government every year brings in over 250,000 immigrants. That doesn't include refugees, and it doesn't include another category I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. But so every year, despite the fact there's high unemployment, the government shoves another 250,000 people into the country. You know, you will hear slogans like, we need immigration to grow the economy. In fact, our Prime Minister said that a few years ago. And you wonder, he's a smart man, but you wonder, well, how could that possibly be? You need immigration to grow the economy. Well, I ask you, what is a new immigrant going to do? And how is that person going to grow the economy? Well, our potential new immigrant, let's call him Ahmed. There's one of two possibilities. Ahmed will come to Canada and Ahmed will get a job. Hooray for Ahmed. But that means that some unemployed Canadian remains unemployed, with a life diminished, perhaps even devastated. Canada loses. The other possibility is Ahmed doesn't get a job. Oh, poor Ahmed. Well, we can't just leave him to starve, so we put him on welfare. He's brought a big family with him. They're too poor to afford normal accommodations. We have to put him in the public housing. He needs to be medicated. His kids need to be educated. He needs to be policed and social worker, perhaps even given English as a second language. Who, once again, Canada loses. So how is it then that mass immigration at a time of high unemployment benefits the economy? It doesn't. Now, it may benefit the economies of certain individuals, like English as a second language teachers, maybe police officers, and government bureaucrats, social workers, but it doesn't benefit Canadians. Immigration doesn't benefit Canadians at times of high unemployment. Right now there are 1.5 million Canadians out of work. Out an unemployment rate of about 6.9%. Now, that probably is low because the unemployment statistics only capture those people who are collecting unemployment insurance benefits. If they've exhausted their benefits, or if they're on welfare or no longer looking for a job, they're not even counted. But at least 1.5 million Canadians are out of work. Any immigrant this year is an insult to those people. Well, why are there powerful forces in our country pushing for more immigration? Well, because some people benefit. If you're a certain type of businessman, it's great. Large scale unemployment means wages are kept down. That's one of the reasons the average Canadian has really not advanced much in the last quarter of a century. That's over half a person's working life. Why are we running faster just to stand still? Because wages have been kept artificially low by an endless flood of cheap labor. That hurts all Canadians, but most of all, it hurts the most vulnerable Canadians, young people, for instance. It used to be, even with relatively minimal education, an ambitious young guy could leave, let's say, high school, find an entry-level job, and work his way up. And fairly quickly, he would have a bit of a nest egg. He could afford to put a down payment down on a home, marry, have children, and raise the next generation without his wife having to go to work, in most cases. We are below replacement level in immigration. In our population. We need 2.1 children per woman of childbearing age. We are a trifle over 1. We're not replacing ourselves. Why? Because it's very difficult for young people to get that job and get established. And I don't mean a minimum wage job. In most parts of the country, a minimum wage job will not allow you to form a family and support a family. It just isn't going to happen. Mass immigration basically prevents Canadians from having the children they want to. It may seem a little strong, but it's a form of genocide, creating conditions that make it difficult for a people to live or to maintain themselves. That's what massive third world immigration is doing to Canada. It's mortgaging our future. In fact, it's canceling the future for many of our children, for many of our people. And it hurts not just the young people, but the most vulnerable, the people with low skills. Now, surely we should have compassion for them as Canadians. People who don't have a great deal of in the way of skill need those entry-level jobs, but just where they want to get one of those jobs, they find themselves up against a horde of people recently allowed in from the third world. It's just not fair. Immigration keeps people poor, keeps wages low, and does not benefit a healthy nation. A healthy nation needs families. A healthy nation needs the economic security for people to have a family and to support that family, preferably on one's salary. That's not been possible for most people for at least 30 years. We don't need the minimum wage plus a buck or two. We need a living wage. But employers won't pay a living wage as long as they can rely on hordes of cheap labor. But some people will say, well, businesses wouldn't be able to survive. Maybe they shouldn't survive. But creative businessmen would know what to do. Number one, they might have to offer a little bit more, offer higher wages, but they would be getting, in many cases, better people. Not people who sort of kind of maybe know a little bit of English, but people who were born here. But it would also force businesses to do something they're often reluctant to do. Maybe we're all reluctant and we're lazy. But that's innovate. You know, 100 years ago, a Saskatchewan farmer could not have a very large piece of land unless he had a large workforce, and most didn't. Why? Because harvesting was very, very labor intensive. And as the farmers knew they would want to grow more wheat, but didn't have the labor force, what did they do? They innovated. So instead of a work gang of 50 men and maybe women with those primitive sickles and scythes slicing their way through a wheat field, very, very labor intensive, the industry invented, first of all, the threshing machine pulled by horses and then pulled by a tractor, and now these multi-million dollar, they're almost like a vacation home on wheels with TV and internet and so on, and the farmer can go through his fields now dozens of times larger than they might have been 100 years ago. Innovation. Well, that is what we have to do throughout the economy. Right now, the fallback position always is more immigration, cheap labor. It's a short-term fix for some people. It's a long-term blight on this country. We recommend a moratorium, a 5-year stop on all immigration until the unemployment level goes to 2%, which is essentially full employment. Until we get those 1.5 million Canadians back to work, we don't need a single immigrant at all. This is Paul Fromm for the Canada First Immigration Reform Committee.